Well, hello and welcome to another edition of ABC, Angie's Book Club. Now, you know me, I love a self-help book. I love to just get into the nitty-gritty of how we can actually use our own skills to uplift ourselves. And that's not in any way, shape, or form saying that I wouldn't use the skills of a therapist or a counselor or even a preacher. But one of the reasons why I'm really excited about this interview is because it's with the amazing Robert Greene. Robert Greene's written many books, and he now has what I would call a greatest hits of all of his books, and it comes in the form of daily laws. And Robert is my guest on today's edition of ABC. Hello, Robert.
Hello, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for your time. I'm really, really grateful and honored that you've taken time out to have a talk with me. Now, this is definitely not your first book,
No.
and I've called it like the greatest hits. So we've had many books from you that all seem to, if I were to say, center around human nature and human behavior. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be very fair. It's a subject that fascinates, been fascinating me for 25 years, trying to decode what's really going on behind people's masks that people wear, what they're really thinking and feeling about you. Yes.
I love the fact that you use the word mask, because we all wear masks, whether we want to accept it,
Yeah.
whether we want to acknowledge it. We all have a feeling that starts off our day. And as we walk out of our front doors, we put a mask on
That's right.
because, in my opinion, and I might be totally wrong, so let's have a conversation about this, we're not sure that we'd be accepted without the mask.
Well, we're social animals, right? And so our survival depends on how people look at us and how they judge us. And from very early on as children, we're primed to become actors in front of our parents to kind of we understand what behavior is acceptable, what behavior is not acceptable. We want to be loved. And so we put on an angelic mask at times to our parents to say, look, I'm really quite good. I deserve your love and respect, even though that's not the real reality. Children have a hellish side as well as an angelic side, like we all do.
Yeah.
So the moment you enter the social arena, you're putting on a mask. You never tell your boss, him or her, exactly what you think about their ideas. Their ideas are always the best. Oh, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. You even do that with your friends, you know. They show you something they've written or something they've created. You go, oh, that's fantastic. Even though in the back of your mind you might have some doubts, right? We are consummate actors. We're continually acting in the course of a day. It's just that some people are comfortable with that and are good at it, and some of us are very uncomfortable with it and are not very good at it. And I don't think that something, I don't judge it. I don't say it's good or bad. It's just a fact. It's just reality. So you need to accept it and you need to become better at it.
So then, Robert, are we not then all walking? Hi there, wifey. Hi. Are we not then? Are we not then all walking through this world wherever we live, whatever community we're a part of, not living in our truth?
Well, it's not, nothing is ever like totally black or white in this situation. Both things can happen at the same time. So we're wearing a mask. We're not completely being who we are, but there is an element of truth. We're not being completely fake, right? So when I'm giving a talk or when I'm on this podcast, I'm obviously assuming a certain persona that fits this kind of world, this kind of medium. But I'm not being completely fake. There's a genuine side to my character that I like to bring out because I'm someone who has a kind of a natural childlike side to my personality. I don't like the feeling that I'm being fake or that I'm trying too hard to impress people. I like to be comfortable in my own skin. But you can do both. You can understand that you have a certain character that you want to be authentic, but that you don't want to offend people,
Yeah.
right? There's politeness in this world, right? And you have to learn to be very sensitive to people's feelings, to their sense of, to their status, to their position, to their backgrounds, etc. We now live in very diverse cultural environments. You have to be very sensitive to where people came from, to their
Yeah.
background, and you can't just say whatever comes to your mind. And the moment you realize, "I can't just say whatever comes to my mind," you become an actor. You're wearing a bit of a mask, but you're not being completely fake, 'cause that would make you uncomfortable, and that would not really work very well. Because people we can sense that someone is being completely fake.
Is it then not dangerous to be comfortable with your mask?
Yes, I mean, you can take it too seriously, you know? I know, like, people who are actors, who that's their whole life, that's their living, right? They can kinda go a little bit crazy because they almost become the person that they're trying to create on screen, etcetera.
Yeah,
Then they
yeah.
go home and they're not that person anymore, and it can kind of play a game on you a little bit. And so
Mm,
if you're going through life continually playing a role, at some point, your true self is gonna rebel, and you're gonna have some issues, you know,
yeah.
it'll come up later in life.
Mm,
So there are some people who take their roles too seriously, right? Who become there's 2 words that we use, or that I like to use. There's your personality, which is comes from the word mask in Latin, persona, and there's
okay.
your character, right? Your character is what's underneath the mask. It's who you really, really are, okay? And there's some people who so identify with their personality that they lose a sense of their soul, of who they really are, and they pay a deep price for that. Maybe not in their 20s or 30s when you can kind of fake it, but as you get older, if you become alienated from your soul, from who you really are, you pay a very heavy price. And I talk about that in my book, The Laws of Human Nature.
Yeah. I want to just quickly, if I may, tap on your book, The Art of Seduction.
Oh, uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Okay, why did you give me that response? I'm
No,
very
no, I'm just kidding. You know, I don't have any shame or regret about my own books, you know.
Oh, well, look, so when I started to research that book, I immediately thought that it was going to cover how to get yourself into the perfect love relationship. But there's an art of seduction in the business world, in politics,
Right,
in leadership.
right.
It's it's a really it's an eye-opening title. I wouldn't say it's a misleading title, but it's just eye-opening. Because if you think you're in a scenario, let's take the workplace, and if you don't necessarily agree with your boss, if you don't necessarily agree with your group leader, you put the mask on, and then they can slip into a mode of seducing you into accepting things their way. Are you? Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, I try to broaden the lens. So when I'm writing the book on the art of seduction, obviously the word conjures up to us, you know, seductions between men and women, or men and men, or whatever,
Yeah.
sexual type seductions.
Yes.
But I was interested more in the psychology behind any kind of seduction. So there's political seductions, as you mentioned, there's marketing seductions, and there are social seductions, the kind that go on in your office or whatever. And to me, they all involve the same kind of process, the same side of kind of psychology. And some people think of seduction as something kind of evil or demonic or Machiavellian. And I try to take it out of that context. So, for instance, in order to seduce someone, in order to get them to like you or like your ideas, or to have some kind of influence over them, you have to know who they are. You have to
Yeah.
treat them as an individual. You have to get into their psychology, what I call enter their spirit, and go, this is who they are, and I can appeal to that. And by doing that, by understanding their individuality, what makes them tick, I can lower their walls, I can lower their resistance, and get them to like me or fund my movie or promote me or whatever. Now, I understand this could be used for nefarious purposes. There are demonic political seducers out there. We have several of them here in the United States. I'm sure you have many of them in England. We
Mhm.
have people, who use marketing and things like that for very bad purposes, etc. But I just wanted to illuminate the process. And it's like most people in this world are very selfish. When they're in the workplace, for instance, they're thinking of themselves.
Yeah.
Do people like me? Are they interested in my ideas? What are they thinking about me? It's always me, me, me. I want
Yeah.
you to flip the script. I want you to go, what are they thinking? What's their world? What are their likes and dislikes? What is their background? What is it that they're missing in life? And that's the key to any kind of influence or success as a social animal in this world.
I loved when you said, how do I get you to lower your wall? How do I get you to like me? It sounds like, in that context, seduction could be quite selfish.
Well, it depends. It can be selfish. It can be not selfish. I wrote a book on power.
Yeah.
Power can be used for good purposes or it can be used for bad purposes. I acknowledge that. But, when you're like interested in another person, let's say for a relationship or just for a sexual encounter or whatever it is, and you want to get them interested in you,
Yeah.
the process of getting outside of yourself and getting inside their world, which is the art of seduction, is actually very therapeutic. It's actually taking you outside of yourself. Okay. So people who are so self centered, who can only think of their own interests, end up becoming very bad seducers because we can pick that up. I mean, in your day-to-day life, Angie, how often do you encounter someone who seems to be truly interested in who you are, in your ideas, in what makes you tick, in your world, and your experiences? I know for me, it doesn't happen very often because
No.
most people come to you, they're thinking about themselves.
Yes. It's
So,
about what they feel they can get from you. It's very rarely a win-win.
yeah. So I'm trying to tell you that if you want to succeed in a sexual seduction or political or marketing or whatever, you have to completely reverse that process. Now that doesn't mean there are people out there who are sociopaths or psychopaths who do both at the same time. They're interested in you, but they're also thinking, how can I use you? Right?
Yes.
And they can be very devilish and they can be very, very difficult to deal with. They're very powerful,
Mm.
charismatic. But that's, to me, a kind of lower level seducer. I'm talking about an ideal, and I have in the book all kinds of ideal figures, male and female, because it's some people think it's just a book for men to pick up women, but half the book is about women seducing men.
Mm.
And I have these kind of ideal figures that I think are kind of these icons for us.
Okay. There are many books, and as I was saying, The Daily Laws is a combination or a greatest hit of
Yeah.
all of the books. And um, there's some really good endorsements on the back of the book. What I'm more interested in, Robert, is how you broke down each of your books to compile the Daily Laws. That must have been quite a task.
Yes, it was. I mean, essentially, my books, I have 6 books, but this is the 7th book, and they're all sort of different, but each one kind of covers, as you mentioned before, human behavior, human psychology, etc. And I've been in consulting since my first book comes out, and I deal with a lot of people, and I feel that there's a lot of pain that people have in their lives, but that they don't acknowledge, and the pain is in their social relationships, in continual misunderstandings. They misread people, or they don't feel they're connecting to people as well as they would like to in friendships or in any kind of relationship. And so I cover that in various different ways in my books, in the power arena for my first book, in the seduction arenas, as you mentioned. I talk in my third book about kind of strategy in business sense. I did a book with 50 Cent, which is about the element of fear in our lives, et
Mm.
cetera, et cetera. Each book kind of covers a facet of how we deal with problems with people, right?
Yeah.
But it's scattered across 6 books and thousands of pages. So I
Mm.
wanted to give people something easier to access, right? So you're right, it's kind of a greatest hits, but there's a logic to it. So the months, the days kind of flow together through a certain structure, a certain order, beginning with understanding who you are, mastery in your career so you can make better choices about your career decisions and
Yeah.
about, then it kind of flows into interpersonal power relationships and problems. Then it goes into like influence and seduction and those kind of ideas. And then the final part deals with the nitty-gritty aspects of human nature about understanding yourself and understanding other people. Because my books, in the end, are about awareness. I'm telling you, you're going around in life, you don't really know who you are,
Yep.
you don't really know understand yourself, and you don't really understand other people. And when you go around unaware, you're creating problems that you're of your own creation, and you're
Yeah.
dealing with it. So I wanted to create a book that would help people in a very quick and easy way deal with these sort of issues, as opposed to having to pour through hundreds of pages of my writings.
Yeah. I love, and it just fell open, but I do love, it's one of the pages that I did look at, January 25th. Change yourself from within, little by little. I think it's human nature that we want change now. We want it now. We just want everything now. And I think this chapter here, it's, well, this page here, it just says everything that I would like to believe for myself. The slow accumulation of knowledge and skills, the incremental improvement in work habits. Just change yourself from within, little by little, in home, in personal, and in work. Just want to ask you why you believe we are a society of the now. Does that make sense?
Well, part of it is human nature. It's not that anything is that we're suddenly different here in the 21st century. I call it our short-term thinking. It's one of the chapters in the laws of human nature. It goes back hundreds, thousands of years. It's part of our psychology, it's part of the way our brains are wired. It's the animal part of our nature where we're always looking at what's immediately in front of us.
Yeah.
But of course, social media has accelerated all of these qualities,
I'm
right?
glad you brought that up because to me it's changed. It's good, but it has also changed a generation.
Well, if so life depends, the power that we have as human beings is our attention, our focus. We can focus on things, whatever we choose to focus on. It can be a skill that we're learning, music or whatever, or a book that we're reading. The deeper our focus, the more power we have, the more we're using the way the human brain was designed for. But when you're constantly checking your phone, when you're constantly looking at your Instagram feed, when every 5 minutes Twitter's coming up with some new thing to get you upset about, you're continually breaking your focus. And you don't understand that that becomes a habit. You think it's innocent. You think, well, I can change that. When I need to focus, I do. You don't understand that unconsciously you're continually breaking that chain of focus and you're paying a price for it. It's degrading your abilities to hold your attention on a single thing.
Yeah.
And I say the ability to focus is the most powerful tool that you have, right? The only reason my books have had any success at all is because I focus so deeply on a single issue
Yeah.
day after day after month, and it shows hopefully in the books that I write. But we can say that for Steve Jobs designing some object, and he was a great believer in the powers of focus. Anybody who succeeds in this life uses that power, and you are unconsciously degrading it.
Okay, so what impact do you believe this social media lack of focus is going to have on the future and the way that we connect with other people?
Well, in some ways, I'm hopeful because I'm been interacting a lot with Gen Zers, young people in their 20s, etc. And I've noticed a lot of them are getting a little bit unhappy, dissatisfied with this state of affairs. They're the ones who've been basically suckled on the internet, even on social media, since their earliest years, right? They've grown up with it. And I'm not saying all of them, because it certainly isn't the case, but many of them are feeling dissatisfied. They understand that to be human, there's something else that's missing. There's
Yeah.
missing this element of focus. There's missing this element of personal interaction as opposed to virtual interaction. They're missing experiences
Yeah.
because Instagram gives you feeds for your ego, et cetera, but doesn't give you an experience like you might have when you take a hike or you go meet some new people or you go travel or something. And I think a lot of young people are rebelling against it,
Yeah.
right? So I'm a little bit hopeful on that front. On the other hand, we're seeing massive amounts of mental health issues in the United States in particular. I imagine it's the same in the UK. A lot of it came from the pandemic and
Yeah.
people being holed up in their houses, but a lot of it comes from social media. You know, things like Instagram are having a terrible effect on particularly young women, on young girls, and their sense of their image and their bodies, etc.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's two sides to it. People are being sucked into this dynamic that they can't control, that is hard to control because the people who design these platforms are very clever in hooking us. On the other hand, the human spirit is sometimes rebelling against this state of affairs. We want something else.
Yeah.
So there's two sides to it, and I don't know exactly which way it's going to go.
Okay. One of the things that I do say, I used to say this quite a lot to my kids, not when they were too young, but when they were old enough to understand it. Human beings are very, very strange animals.
Oh, believe me.
The only thing we don't do is eat our young, unlike the animal kingdom.
Yeah,
But human behavior, I think, at this point, especially like since the pandemic, since lockdown, since, the world's really, really changing, it's being dissected and it's being, um, it's just being, oh my goodness, what's the word? It's being dissected. It's being developed. We're looking at human behavior now in a way that we've never looked at it so deeply before. And it's so important, especially as we understand the responsibility of having children, running a home, being in a relationship, being in a marriage. It's no longer about the nice dress, the ceremony, the party. It's about a life, isn't it? It's about a lifestyle. And it's about connecting with the right person. I was saying to somebody just yesterday, when you're in a relationship, when you're in the right relationship, the right person will bring out the best in you.
right.
But it has been, well, let me speak for myself. It's been a mission of mine to fix someone who's not bringing out the best in me instead of just walking away. Do you know what I mean? Our behavior is really coming up to the fore now. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to be a little bit careful in this world because sometimes when you try and change someone,
Yeah.
it can have the opposite effect. And you can have that
Awful.
particularly with children
Yeah.
who tend to rebel against, any kind of overt attempt at influence. So you're right to point out how complicated human beings are.
Yeah.
And if you just spend a moment looking at yourself, how in the day-to-day life, your moods are continually changing. You continually bounce from one idea to another. Your memories are filled with, as you get older, with thousands of different experiences you had. You're this incredibly complex mosaic. But when
Mm.
you're dealing with other people, you tend to simplify them. You tend to project onto them your own wishes and
Oh,
desires, and you
yeah.
make them this kind of simple cartoon figure. But they're immensely complex. And I know parents deal with that most of all because they want their children to be a certain way, but it's like a chemical reaction. And their attempt to change them or influence them has the opposite reaction, right?
Yes.
Because they have their own willpower, they need to separate themselves from you, even though they love you, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. And so, and now as you rightly say, we're dealing with it even more as so many of these issues are getting worse and worse because of social media, because of the pandemic. So the point of my books is to be more sensitive, to be more aware, that to not think that you know everything about the people you're dealing with,
Yeah.
because you can be in a relationship for 20 years and you still don't really
Oh,
know the
no,
person you're dealing with.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Just not know who you've been living with, and yeah, I totally agree. Robert, there's so many areas that I could talk to you about. We touched on parenting, which I actually wasn't going to go into.
Okay.
Relationships, marriage. Oh, it's the workplace. It's so. Oh my goodness, life can be so full on, can't it? There's so much to deal with on a daily basis. One of the things that I do like about Daily Laws, it's not what I call a handbag book.
Mm. It won't
It's
even fit in your handbag.
it wouldn't, no, this would not fit in my handbag. It's more of what I call a coffee table book or a bedside book.
Right,
So, you could read whatever day you're on first thing in the morning or last thing at night. And that then provokes your thoughts into
right,
becoming, I don't know if a better person, rounded person, different person. Maybe it provokes your thoughts to look at yourself
right.
and how you then project against others, because people behave towards you based on what you give out. So
Most
maybe,
definitely.
yeah, so maybe that's what this is about. So perhaps it's a good job it can't fit in my handbag. So,
Uh-huh, okay, I'm glad.
so
Well,
that is a good thing.
eventually we'll come out with a handbag version, but that's a
Oh,
lot later.
please do.
Okay,
Robert Greene, Daily Laws. Robert, thank you so much for your time, and let's keep in touch.
definitely, Angie. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.